Okay, great question about what it actually takes to become a showrunner. Hi, I'm Shannan E. Johnson, CEO of The Professional Pen, where we develop screenwriters from idea to pitch. Need help on your screenplay? Go to www.theprofessionalpen.com. Now, going back to our comparison to football, being a showrunner of a television show is like being the coach of an NFL team. There is no one particular way to getting there, right? It's not an application process. It's not like working for a company and deciding you want to be a manager, putting in a particular kind of work, and in X amount of years you can be up for management, or realizing that you can apply across, right, transition to another company, showing the skills that you have, and then getting into that management position by applying. Hollywood simply doesn't work that way. You may hear all the time that this is a who you know kind of business. So keeping that in mind, we're going to put that to the side and talk about what are the skills necessary to be a showrunner. Therefore, what positions give you those skills, right? And then you can kind of start to understand how who you know and those skills can get you into that position. So as we talked about before, a showrunner can be the creator of a show, right? That means they wrote the show. They wrote the pilot. They pitched the pilot, and the pilot was then picked up, as in bought, by a studio or a network, and then now that show is going on, and the showrunner will act as the manager of the writer's room, meaning they are going to do what we call beating out, which just means that they're going to figure it out, right? They're going to beat out the story for the entire season, each season, and they are going to assign episodes to each of the writers in the writer's room. And then they are also going to be the person, or they will delegate it to another person that's higher up, who then makes sure the continuity is there between each episode. Because you can imagine that there are several people on a writing staff, and each of those people who is writing their different episode, there might be some inconsistencies and things like that. So the best way to learn that particular skill about how to beat out a season, how to delegate episodes, how to understand worlds, character, plot enough that you can even understand that the season or the series has legs enough for what are we going to do in season 1, what are we going to do in season 2, what are we going to do in season 3 is by writing, right? So you have to get to know the particular act structure for the kind of shows that you're going to write. Writing a 1-hour show is not the same as writing a half-hour show. Writing half-hour single camera comedy is not the same as writing half-hour multi-camera comedy. And now comedies and dramedies and dramas tend to be in all those different lengths. So your job is to really become the master of the one that you know you want to do, right? Because people are going to come to the person who they know can do that particular thing. So just because you're a feature writer does not mean someone's going to hire you to be a showrunner. For example, on Ozark, the person who pitched it, the person who created it was a features person. They wrote movies. They produced movies. They didn't know anything about television. Therefore, showrunners were hired to come run that show. Okay? So the first thing is you need to be a writer. The second thing, you need to know how to write that particular kind of format and structure. And thirdly, that means you need to staff. So that goes back to the who you know. It's about networking in order to get in a staff position. You need to have a writer's portfolio that shows that you can write in the voice, characters, and world of whatever it is that you're saying your brand is. I write dramas, I write coming of age, I write science fiction, I write comedies, I write half hour, I write 1 hour, whatever that is, your portfolio should show that, so that when you do get an opportunity to interview with a showrunner to join their staff, you have proof that you can do that thing, okay? Once you join the staff, your job is to be able to stay on it. So as long as that writer's room is there, you want them calling you back. So that's about your performance. Everybody understands that from any job. It's about your performance. If your performance is good, then you'll get called back. You will also want to move up in rank. So we won't go into the politics of moving up in rank in this particular video. We'll just talk about moving up in rank, because as you move up in rank, you get more responsibilities. And all of those responsibilities are necessary to know how to run a show. Once you start getting up to the ranks of having producer behind your name, you will now be able to be on set as the person who helps to produce the episode, meaning being there for all of the things that are happening logistically, making changes in the script while you're on set, because things change and they always change. And it also means that you'll be there during post-production to make sure that you're capturing all of the best takes, etc., to put the TV show together. Okay? All of those are necessary skills. The other skills that are necessary is being a good manager, even though sometimes terrible managers get into management positions, right? But being a good manager, because you're dealing with people, you're in the people business. So you're not only dealing with your whole writer staff, but you're dealing with the production and you're liaising with the studio and the network. A big part of your job as manager is to make sure that everything stays on time, everything stays within budget. The only way that you can learn how to do that is by being on sets and by being in those writers' rooms, right? So that you can understand exactly how much is this scene going to cost, because you know what the budget is. And if you see that one of the writers has written a scene that's going to cost too much and take it out of budget, your job is to give them the note to bring it down, or you will bring it down yourself, right? Another job for a showrunner is to understand how to take and address notes, because every single one of those pitches that you take to the network or studio, every single outline, every single episode, they have to approve it before it goes into production. So the showrunner is the king of the writer's room and the set. The studio executives are the kings of everything, right? They're the god, right? So nothing can happen without their approval. So that means you're going to be sending the scripts to them, and they're going to be getting on the phone with you to give you notes. And your job is to be able to address those notes, because if they don't approve it, you don't go to production. And unlike on streamers where they're shooting everything at once, which gives them a different kind of schedule. It doesn't mean that they don't have any pressure, but their schedule is different. But when you're doing primetime television, you're in the writer's room and in production at the same time. So if you don't get approval on an episode and it doesn't make it into production, it pushes everything back and you start to spend more money. So your job is to really understand all of those pieces of the puzzle in order to have a successful show. Another way to get into the showrunner position is to be a producer. It'd be a great producer, right? Who possibly was an executive before at a studio or a network, or possibly was a producer or executive at a production company. And so they've still worked in TV. This is still not the I jumped from features into television, because the beast is different. Why? In film, you may be shooting for X amount of weeks and then it's done. X amount of months and then it's done. In television, there is a consistent thing going. So for example, in primetime television, you might be shooting a different episode every 8 days. So that's just a different beast, being able to make your days and being able to stay in budget and be able to keep the whole thing going. But let's just say you have a little bit of that experience because you've been producing television, not as a writer, but as an executive at a production company, which might give you a producer title. It just depends, right? So that person might be able to come in and showrun, but 9 times out of 10, they will be given a co-showrunner because there still needs to be someone who runs the room, right? Somebody still has to come in and do the creative and story part. So even though you might do the logistical part, that person has to do the story part. So now you guys are co-showrunners because it is 15 jobs in one. So why wouldn't you want an extra person? So I know I just went into more detail about what the person does, but that will kind of help you understand what skills you need and what places you can probably find those skills. Start as an assistant at a production company in development or current production. If you want to know what that is, drop down in the comments. I'll make another video. You can try to get a writer's assistant position. They are coveted and they are hard. They are hard to get and they are hard to get out of. It's almost easier to staff than it is to become an assistant and then try to get out of your assistant position. So if you want to hear more about that, drop in the comments. We'll talk about that. Your ideal thing to do is to be writing, to be staffing, and to be moving up those ranks. And if you have your own ideas to pitch, once you get to a particular point in your career, you can now pitch those ideas and end up being a showrunner. If you have moved up to at least producer, one of those producer positions, probably not the lowest one, but one of those producer positions that are on the staff, and someone else is starting a show and they need someone more seasoned, they might reach out to you to come run that show, even though you didn't write it. So there are several different ways to get into the position. I hope this helps. Happy writing! Get notes on your script that get you unstuck at www.theprofessionalpen.com.
professional pen. The professional